Welcome to Deer Talk Now. I'm Brad Rucks, your guest appearance, I guess. I don't do a ton of these. I'm kind of always behind the scenes, but today I really want to take a look at what to do after the season, right? We're in the Midwest. Our season's winding down. We probably have a few more days if you wanted to go out and do some management. But what's the next step? I know a lot of you guys cash it in, right? You're already on the ice fishing, you're doing your other stuff, and that's fine. For me, this is when next year starts. If I want to be successful, this is what really goes through my mind. So first off, I want to find out what bucks live through the season, which ones didn't. For me, food is king, right? We're up in the Midwest. We're out of Wisconsin. You can't use feeders. If you're in a state where you could use a feeder or you can supplement feed, I'm all about that. I would do that in a minute if I lived in Iowa or some of these other states, Kansas, where you could feed, because you're going to attract all the deer in, a large area are going to come to those feeders, and it's easy to monitor. Right now, Wisconsin doesn't have a lot of snow, so these deer are not really concentrated in any areas. So we're still running 16 trail cameras is what I'm running right now. And I know a lot of the guys, even my neighbors, we trade photos of the bucks that we're getting after the season. And he goes, hey, I really don't have many buck photos. My cameras are all dead. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the most important time, because these deer that you have that live through the season, they're probably going to be on your property next year. And the more intel you get of what he's doing now and the pattern that he is on, you can reference. So what we do, I'm going to give you a typical example. We got a beautiful deer. He's 3.5. I think he's got 14, 15 scoreable points is what he had earlier in the season. He's a little bit broke up. Now I really don't know what he has, but we know that he's alive, right? So here's my thought process. Now that I know he's alive, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna categorize every photo that I got of him for the last year, because deer, once they get past 3, especially when they turn 4, when they turn 5 and 6, they get in this yearly pattern where it's almost the same exact thing. They're gonna come to that same spot to rut. They're gonna hit these same food plots to look for does. They're in that same general area. So you start putting your notes down of how you're gonna hunt this deer. And perfect example, my son killed a great deer this year. He's 166-inch deer, which is an absolute giant for our area. It's 5.5. Well, we knew exactly what deer it was last year at 4.5. He was on our list, and he was kind of on the hit list, to be honest with you, because by me, they don't normally live past 4. This deer broke up, and he was right in the middle of our property, and we're like, what the heck? Let's see what he'll do. I think we can get him through the season, and he made it through the season. Well, late season, photo after photo after photo. But what I did is I started looking at when he was really visible, when we could actually kill him, and I knew from his photos from the year before, it wasn't until the middle of October till he was really walking during the daylight. So keep that in mind. I'm doing all this pre-work, realizing this deer is not moving until the middle of October. So what did we do this year? This year hits, we get pictures of him in velvet, and he's on the exact same pattern right up until the acorn drop. Big difference in 1 year to the second year. This year, the acorns were phenomenal. Last year, hardly any acorns in the state of Wisconsin, at least in my area. So what that deer did around September 5th, he vacated my place. We don't have acorns. So he literally left. And it's a sickening feeling as a hunter, right? Because you did all this intel, and you think, oh my God, he's left. Where is he? What's he going to do? And in the back of my mind, I pretty much had an idea what he was doing. And it's kind of funny when you have a big deer in your neighborhood, word gets out, right? All of a sudden, somebody spilled something, and I learned he was actually only about a mile and a half away, and they had pictures of him in an acorn flat. And in between there's also a island of oaks. And there's no doubt in my mind from the pictures that we did get him, the few that we had, he was probably using that oak island as well as the other person's oaks. And I kept on telling my son, it'll be fine. He's going to come back. He's going to hit that rutting pattern. And right around October 1st, we started getting photos of him. And it's not good photos. It's all nighttime photos. You still can't hunt them. And I was like, middle of October is when he broke free last year. And literally we started hunting him in the middle of October, and he killed him on third sit. Why were we successful? It's because we knew that deer. We knew what he did. We knew what he liked, because once I knew he was alive in winter, I could go back and I could figure out his exact pattern, and that gave us our strategy to hunt him next year. This year, we're looking at a big non-typical. So again, I'm trying to go back. We're trying to figure out exactly what he did. He's only 3, so he's not in as hard a pattern. 3-year-olds, a lot of times what you'll find on your property is they're going to roam, right? So a lot of times a 3-year-old will wander. The old saying is walk till they drop. Charlie Alzheimer said it best: 3 and 4s walk till they drop. In my area, if he's 4, he's probably one of the more boss bucks. And normally, if you get him in your area, he'll settle down. Now, a 3-year-old, if there's no 4s in there, probably will settle down. And I think, knock on wood, I think this non-typical has settled down because we have almost nightly photos of him right now. And literally, he spent most of the late rut on our place, and I think he's going to maintain. So, 2. What I want to also look for is not only what the deer pattern is, I want to see what his preferential food is during certain times of year, because that'll tell you what he's going to do for next year as well. So if, some deer in particular love corn, some would rather have cereal grains, some like beans, granted in the summer, they're all on beans, right? It's super easy to find. But once those batch sugar groups break up, it's important to know what his next preferred food source is so you can kind of hone on that and try to get a pattern and get your cameras up. Let's talk a little bit about camera placement. So for me, camera placement's all about food late season. I don't care where he beds. I probably know already where a lot of these deer bed. What I want to do is I want to find out what deer are there, where they're coming out, what food sources they're on. So we try to put cameras on all the exit or entry routes into the big egg fields, as well as a camera on every one of our food plots. And again, that's going to give us the buck intel that you need to know how many bucks live through the season. And we keep photos of them all. Even some of the 1.5-year-olds, I know it's hard because they're probably going to turn 2 next year and they're hard to identify. But sometimes you'll see a distinctive character like a extra white spot or a double throat patch, and you can keep tracking some of those deer. And honestly, it just makes you feel good when you have 30 bucks that are living on your place or thereabouts, and you can say that to other people. Hey, gun season wasn't as popular or not as many got shot as you would have assumed. Here's some of the deer that went through, and a lot of people are impressed by a 2-year-old, which is great. This year on our hit list, there's a 3.5-year-old 10. I felt really good about it early season because we had a ton of photos of him on our place. But he's one of those deer that vacated off our place. He wandered off the reservation, so to speak. I'm not saying we won't kill him next fall because I think he'll spend some time on our place. I don't feel like he's going to spend 90% of his time on my place, which makes it a lot harder to kill. And that's when this patterning of the individual bucks gets really important, right? So I know what time he came back onto my place. He'll probably do that again. So I think right before gun season, we probably have a week window sometime in there where he's going to be on those same food plots. So we call it the pond or the pond triangle. He's going to be in one of those, which are kind of my border food plots. And I think those are going to be the best odds of killing that deer. Trail cameras, the one thing I'm going to go ahead and say, I love cellular, right? And I love solar. So if you don't want to spend a lot of time in the winter, because winter's going to eat batteries with the cold weather and everything else, invest in a solar panel. They're pretty cheap right now for $100, and you can be like, that's expensive. It's as much as the camera. I'll tell you right now, I'm running cameras that have been out in the field for over 800 days, and we have not touched them. All we do is make sure, they're programmable remote, and we can clear off the SD cards if we have to, but other than that, you literally don't touch them, and that is a key. Just think of the money I saved on batteries alone. Second thing I want to do is this off-season preparation is think about the stands. So, a lot of you guys are placing new stands. A lot of you are hunting out of traditional stands that you've hunted over and over again. I like to literally think about each one of the stands. I want to think if I got to brush out more stuff, if the stand wasn't placed correctly, if it squeaked. I want to fix all that stuff. I want to do it this time of year so that when I go back in the summer and just kind of do that final touch-up, that I'm not in there very long. Because let's face it, guys, when you're in the woods in July, it's a time when there's no human scent normally in there. And when you're in there, you're going to sweat no matter what. You're going to stink it up. And if you're on a mature deer and he knows you're in that area, he's going to start already getting kind of wired on that. So that's why I want to try to clean up as much of that stuff as I possibly can. Second thing is, you might have a new stand that you place is totally in the wrong spot, right? A lot of times in the season, you don't want to take the time or effort to move it a little bit, but now you've sat in there 2 or 3 times. Now you know what the deer do in that particular area. It's time to move that stand. Put it in the right spot. Put it, where it's going to be good. think about predominant winds, think about where the sun is. There's a lot of factors in that, but it's time to do that thing. The other thing with box blinds right now, a lot of times you put up a permanent box blind. And for me, I'm always thinking about, which way I should put the door, right? Because it's always the smallest window. And normally I put it in a spot where I could easily sneak out where I'm not going to get seen that much. But sometimes when you sit in that box stand over, a course of a season, you realize that the stand is facing the wrong way. So what we do is time to get the tractor down there, put it up on the forks, move it around a little bit, move the box stand again if you need to move it in a totally different spot, and go from there.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. Whether I'm in a tree stand, ground blind, or spot and stalk hunting, I know the Nitro 505 is up to any challenge. Check one out at a dealer near you or log on to 10pointcrossbows.com for more information.
While I'm mentioning the box blinds or stands, we also do a lot of little things to make our stands better. And that's with mock scrapes, especially. I got a little method, the T-Post Wildlife Research came out with a really cool system with a double branch to hang branches where you could put a 4x4 in the ground and literally remove the branches every season and put new branches in and put them in the middle of your food plots. Again, all you're doing is trying to make your food plots into a buck mecca. It's time to do some of that stuff, or think about where the deer bed, where the bucks normally come into, and where's the spot to put some of these scrape spots, because you're trying to set them up for the perfect shot, right? Everybody wants that 20, 25-yard shot. You got to make sure that it's downwind. By us, predominantly, we get west, northwest winds. So I'm always going to put that scrape west of me and probably a little bit to the south of me so that my wind's blowing away from that, but where he's already passed and he feels safe and I can get that quarter and away shot. The other thing, when I'm mentioning food plots, I already want to start my strategy for next year. When you plant food plots, you already have a rotation, right? So normally you're going to go from a brassicas to some sort of beans or a cereal grain or a summer oat or whatever. I start planning out my strategy right now. Sometimes you tested a new plot, right? And some of the plots, I wish I could tell you everything worked in my area. It does not. I've tried seeds that really the deer didn't like as much as what I thought they would. I've had others where I didn't think it was going to be good, and they were very, very successful. So a big part of my thing is testing different seeds in the spring and fall, seeing what works, doubling up on the stuff that does or that I know that works, and then coming up with my hunting strategy. We always hunt from the outside in. And what that means is, I'm not going to my best food plots early in the season. I'm going to let the deer have those. I don't care if there's a big mature deer in there. If I'm doing more damage, spooking more deer, getting in and out, then it warrants going in there trying to harvest them. I'm going to stay out of it. So we try to that outside in. So you start on the fringe, which means I want my early plots into attractants that are early in the season. Clovers are always good. Brassicas are one of the late seasons, so those are going to be closer to the bedding areas. Beans are always good. If you have them, they're still green by the time September or early October hits. It's going to be a mecca of a whitetail activity. The other thing is I try to plan my plots so that everything kind of hits at a different time. If I'm planting soybeans, I want to make sure I have pods in early November, right? Because deer love standing soybeans. I don't care what time of year it is. When those pods are ripe, deer are going to be attracted to it. Everybody plants corn. I think they'd rather have soybeans in my area. So I really focus on beans. I focus on brassicas. I focus on cereal grains. And those are my hard, fall plots. But I want to make sure I have a plan for where I plant everything. And you can deviate that a little bit. Sometimes in the spring, I'll wait until the farmers plant their beans or their corn so I understand where the deer or how they're going to use his land. And that will dictate how the deer pattern through my property going to those big destination fields. Again, it's all a strategy. And if you map this all out, and there's great software out there. You can use HuntStand for food plots, even Onyx now. I mean, all these have apps that are really, really good to help you dictate how you're going to utilize your place or how you're putting trails in. Another thing that I just mentioned were trails, right? So it is imperative that you guys have a clean entry and exit point from your stands. A lot of people don't take the time to put designated trails into their property. And what happens is you end up going in a different way every single time and you don't keep the foliage down. So you're just educating whitetails and you're just leaving a bunch of human scent. We like to go into properties either, depending on which way the wind is, on either the east or west side. And literally most of our stands are going to go straight down the east or straight down the west. Depending on the wind, I want my wind blowing into the neighbors, whichever way it is, so that I'm not spooking the deer that are living on my property. Now that could change on your property. Maybe you don't have the bedding area. My place is almost all bedding area with smaller food plots. But if you're the opposite of that and you have more of the fields and the egg fields, the way you go on your property is going to be totally different. I always laugh. For years, I'd watch one of my neighbors, and some of my neighbors still do this during gun season. It's like the scattered shotgun approach. They'll have 5 guys on a small piece of property and they all walk in different ways. And all they're doing is driving their deer. Like literally, they're driving their deer off their property onto the neighbors. And if that neighbor has very low pressure during the firearm season, all those deer are going to hold up there. And you see it over and over and over again. And when you don't pressure your property, the deer are so much more relaxed when they're in that area. So if you have this established trail system, it's a great way to get in and out of your stands. What takes a trail system? We try to brush everything out. This year I'm looking at doing a skid steer with a forestry mulcher on it to make my trails a little bit wider. And why I want that, I want to be able to groom a lot more of that stuff with using my ATV, right? You're using UTV and a sprayer, and this way I can keep the foliage down. If it's dead foliage, you don't have to worry about stickers. You don't have to worry about sick tights, any of that stuff. The other thing is I don't make my lanes totally where we walk in totally straight, because what I found out is rather than a straight line, deer don't like walking down a straight line, right? They only like to be able to be in an area where they feel secure. For a deer to feel secure, he wants to be able to see about 20 yards away, but he wants to be able to jump in the brush. So what we do is we kind of angle ours back and forth to make a winding trail so that no matter what time, that deer can only see so far down that trail. And it's amazing how many deer are going to walk down the exact same trails that we do. We're using scent thief, spray. So when we walk in, so that you don't have to worry when you're during the season, you don't have to worry about that deer smelling you. There's so many ways of hiding your scent. And then with no foliage, the only thing you really have to worry about is, like when you walk, the air that comes out of your boots and a little bit of human scent that's left. It's so much less than when you're brushing up, your hand hits grass or a piece of tree or tree branch. That leaves so much more scent. If you're not touching that foliage, now you can get away with a lot more, and then you don't have to worry about burning out stands, because so many people burn out their stands. Typically on a property, I only like to hunt my stands 3 or 4 times a season. I know I own more land than most of you guys, and I don't have a lot. I mean, I got 250 acres basically that we hunt on with probably 30, 35 sets. The other thing I want to talk about for a second is, hunting during the wrong time of year. I mentioned it earlier. If you're targeting a particular deer and he's not daylighting or walking during the daylight, don't go out there early season. If he's not coming out to a food plot and you got pictures of him, even if he's on yours, the odds are so slim of him stepping out if you've never had a daytime photo. Wait until the time is right. It's hard to do. I mean, and you're going to be showing your buddies some of the photos of, hey, here's the deer I'm going to shoot, or going after, and they're going to be like, okay, well, how'd you do? And you're going to be like, I didn't hunt yet. And they're going to be like, get in there. You got to get in there on him. No, you don't. If you pressure that deer and you scent that thing up before he's even daylighting, you're not going to have a chance to shoot him. He's going to vacate that property before you even know it. Now, there is a downside to sometimes when you have a particular deer and you let him go, right? In my area, my property is pretty low, so it's very wet in certain areas. And the problem with wet ground is if it's a dry season, the deer act differently than if it's a wet season. We had one particular deer we let go. He's a great buck. He's 4.5. We're all excited. He lived in the middle of our property. And the next summer was even wetter than normal, and fall was wetter than normal. And literally, he moved almost, I would say, three-quarters of a mile away is where he ended up, setting up base. And yeah, we had him on our place a couple times. I had probably two or three photos of him all fall, and the neighbors shot him. And good for them. I'm not upset about it. But I was like, God, if that would have been just a normal year like the year before, that deer probably would have stayed on our place, and we would have had the chance to shoot him. But they can't get big if you take them the year before. So you always got to be willing to sacrifice a little bit. And if you're not willing to sacrifice, go ahead and shoot them. I mean, I'm not going to hold that against you. I don't think anybody would. I mean, some people are, you get overzealous and think every deer in the woods that's bedded on yours is your deer. Well, he's not, right? Let's face it. If he's spending more time on your property, all it does is give me a little bit better odds than the neighbors to shoot that whitetail. And does it happen some years you don't have a shooter on your place? Yeah, it could be, depending on what your goals are. And if that happens, all I can tell you is, have some friends out of state or be looking at public ground out of state. And that's another great off-season thing. Think about that. What's going to happen if there's not a deer that I want to shoot on my property? Are you going to give up the hunting season for a year? Probably not, right? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to hunt someplace. So have a bank of places that you can get. Some of these states, it takes years to be able to draw, right? So you're going to have to draw 4 or 5 years if you want an archery tag in Iowa, or if you want a muzzleloader hunt or shotgun hunt in Iowa, it's going to take you a year or two. Kansas is going to take you a year, maybe two. Other states like Missouri or New York, a lot of other ones are over the counter. So I always like to have an over the counter spot, Missouri or some other place like that, where I can fill in if there's not a deer that I want to shoot, or good fortune, right? Smiles on me. I harvest that deer that I wanted to shoot on my place. Now I got a backup where I can go again and continue the season. Because let's face it, when you're tagged out, man, it's a bad feeling when all your buddies are still hunting. And the rut only happens during one time of year. And I love to sit in a tree, even if I'm not going to shoot anything. It's just looking at God's world in a different way, and it just makes me smile. It makes me happy to be out there in a tree. And I know you guys feel the same way, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be sitting here listening to me. So we talked a little bit about stands. I talked a little bit about food. I talked a little bit about deer. Now let's talk about off-season preparation as a person, mentally, physically. Right now I'm a little chunky, so I'm doing some stuff. I got my plan for next fall, what I want to do. Man, I know what I want to do. I want to cut about 40 pounds, and that's my goal. So you got to set your goal. You got to figure out a way to do it, and that's what I'm going to do. Come fall next year, I hope to be doing a lot of different things in multiple states, and I want to feel a lot better than what I felt this year, because this year I got winded. I pulled one big deer out of Illinois, and I only had a drag at 30 yards, and I thought I was going to die. So that is not going to happen again for me, and if you don't want it to happen for you, it's time to really start thinking about hitting the gym. It's start working out, start eating better. We're all getting older, and it seems like as you get older, it's easier to pack on the weight. Overall, hopefully everybody had a great season. Like I said, it's been a good year for us. My son killed the big deer on my place. We're excited about what the future holds. We got a number of great deer. Hopefully you do too. If you don't know what's on your property, this is the time of year to get those cameras out. Do your research. It's going to make you more successful. I know it takes time. I know it takes time away from your family, but today, with the cell phones that they have or cell cameras out there, it's very little impact. You don't have to be out there, beating the bush. For me, I'm excited about shed antler hunting season because, like I said, we probably got at least 10 different 2-year-olds, three or four 3-year-olds. There's one deer that we had come through that we thought had made it through the season, and something happened to him, and he's wounded. We're definitely going to find his rack because I'm pretty sure he's dead now. But again, and that gives you some more recognition to get out there and shed hunt as well. I mean, that's the last thing for preparation. It's not going to come for us for a couple more months. Our deer normally drop in February, but I can guarantee you this, I'm going to be out there looking for some antlers because there's nothing more than confirming when you find one of these from the buck that you were hoping that lives, and it just drives you to hunt harder the following year. So all that, take that into consideration. I wish you guys all luck. This is Brad Rucks from Deer Talk Now. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Tune in to next week's show.